This is the HX Collective Self Channel, where we explore the relationship we have with ourselves. In today's conversation with my guest, Andrea Mac, she reflects on the journey of self discovery and the impact of this journey and how it has affected her human experience. The HX Collective explores the human experience through three main channels of life: work, relationships, and self. With raw, authentic conversations, the podcast investigates how challenges can become powerful teachers, leading to personal growth and deeper connections. Rooted in humanity-centered design, each episode reflects a commitment to doing good and doing well, featuring diverse voices and generational perspectives. Expect gripping stories of struggle and success, with thought-provoking discussions and concrete tools and tactics that encourage you to rethink your relationship with distress, helping you to establish your full human experience. This is the HX Collective channel. So, Andrea, what a great conversation we've been having. And really, the mission of the HX Collective is to elevate human flourishing. And, we've had a chance to talk about how that looks at work. We've certainly really dug into relationships of all different types. I want to talk for a moment about the elevating of human flourishing with ourselves. Now, there's no shortage of communication, particularly for professional women, about the importance of self care. We've certainly heard the thing of put your mask on first before you help others. And even though I'm sort of making light of that, there is a really strong depth that if you don't possess the capacity of caring for yourself, it's hard to give away what you don't possess. All that being said, though, is I think certainly post COVID, this concept of self care is really being recast. And as we're thinking about human flourishing and how we prioritize or engage ourselves, why do you think now is a particularly poignant and important moment to have a new relationship with this, elevating the human experience as we care for ourselves?
Um, I think it's a really complex and simple thought at the same time. Like, what I'll actually share something that my therapist shares with me, which is what self actualization becomes. So, like, when you're living your purpose on a daily basis, and when what you think and say and do are all in alignment, there's a certain level of one piece that comes with living in that type of space. And two, when you're able to live your purpose and do that on a daily basis, it's a gift. It's the place that humans thrive. It's the place that we can give to others. It's the place where we can create sustainable communities, societies, and worlds. And so when I think about human flourishing as an individual concept, I think about how it ties back into like your God-given purpose or your innate and natural talents. It has nothing to do with the financial state. It has nothing to do with your political empowerment. It has to do with the self-actualization of your talents and your objectives. So if I were to say like buyers only buy two things, outcomes and good feelings, I would also say individuals are here to really think about like fulfillment and impact. And so that is the construct on which I think about how I'm paying attention to my own flourishing in addition to the partnerships, relationships, or communities I find myself in to encourage a piece of flourishing.
Yeah. I think what you're describing around this idea of fulfillment and impact, there's a premise I think that's embedded in that. And people will ask me, how to thrive at work or thrive in their lives. And I often say the first thing is to get really, really clear on what it is that you really, really, really want for your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing to me how often people will say, I want to be happy. But when you really unpack that, it gets to that source code. Like, what's the underlying set of values? What's the amplification of those talents? And how you can manifest those in a way where you're caring for yourself, know thyself, to be able to engage with others. Can you talk a little bit about practices that you've either witnessed or applied that have helped you get your sense of purpose, or how you've come to be clear about like what do you really, really, really care about? Like what are the core values that you're wanting to express as a way of contributing to human flourishing, but really it's your human flourishing by being authentic to what's true for you.
That's a great question. And I'll share a story actually about a really pivotal time in my individual life in which I questioned who I was or what I cared about. When I left the corporate world to start my own practice and my own consultancy, I hired a coach to kind of get me through those early days of making sure that I wasn't going to succeed in the wrong direction. Like, I really wanted to challenge myself to say, is this what I really want? Is it a misdefinition of success? Is it like I can do anything right now? How am I going to, what next step am I going to choose? And so I hired a coach who gave me an assignment. And the assignment was to jot down, like to architect my most perfect day. Like, write down what is the most perfect day I can think of. And she said, be as specific as possible. Like, what time do you wake up? What were your PJs like? What did you eat for breakfast? Where did you go next? Like, take it as detailed, as minute by minute as I could, to list out some of the things that would make up what an ideal or perfect day was for me. And at first I thought, like, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. Like, why am I paying, X amount of dollars an hour to have somebody walk me through this? But I'm a big fan of doing my homework and getting A's. So I completed the assignment as expected. And for me, it was really transformational. It became like, when I started, I was like, oh, I woke up and I had coffee and, it was really simple. But as I spent more time and I did a stream of consciousness, what I discovered was that there were a lot of patterns. There were a lot of patterns around rest. There were a lot of patterns around alone time and thinking time and reading time. And there were a lot of patterns around things like a garden. A garden kept coming up. It kept coming up in my perfect day. Well, I didn't have a garden. I don't know how to garden. I've never gardened, but it kept being part of this vision that I saw myself in what my life looked like. And I thought, like, well, okay, well, that was kind of interesting. So we reviewed it together and we looked for patterns that reinforced what values there were at the root of it for me. And I'll tell you that that was the best $500 an hour that I spent, because it became my checklist of what to say no to, because I was being really honest with myself in that document, knowing that no one else had to look at it. It was really an exploration of who I am and what was at the core of what I want my days to look like. And your days, how you spend your days is how you spend your life. And so getting that day right is more critical than getting the, like, career goal right, or getting the, big, whatever, BHAG, what do they call it? Big, hairy, audacious goal right. Like, it's how you spend your days that accumulate to that. So for me, that exercise became a real honest gut check with myself about what I want and I don't want. And I'll tell you, in the midst of, like, leaving corporate and starting my own thing, I got approached by a number of companies who said, like, we would love to have you. Would you come interview? Two of which were private equity. Like, who doesn't want a private equity job focusing on growth with a huge upside, right? But it didn't check my boxes of what my days would look like. It didn't check that I was home for dinner. It didn't leave me time or capacity for these pieces. So nothing's wrong with that, but it was me being honest with myself about what I wanted my days to look like. So it gave me a map. And like, so practicality, one, I had a map. That's how I got clear on what I really wanted. Because if you ask somebody what they really want and they say, I want to be happy or I want to be successful, you have to really get to the heart of what that success will feel like. And then the practicality of having a, like, no list. Like, I have a do not enter list, a no list, a do not do list, and that's helpful. So as I make jest of, I don't like taking my kids to the park, it's on my no list. Like, I don't do it. I'm not going to do that. So I have given myself kind of some boundaries and some lanes around what's really honest with myself, that's separate and apart from any family expectations on me, societal expectations. Like, I know I'm more clear now on where my happiness comes from and how to prioritize those moments in time.
I wish so much we could harvest what you just said and give it to young people to start contemplating that so much earlier in their lives. The no's are really the empowerment to the yeses. When your yeses are so clear that it simply means there's not room. It's a function of, if I'm so aware of where I'm going to invest my energy, what is aligned with my core values, what is that sense of purpose and calling, then anything that doesn't match it, it's in effect easier to reject because it's a function of you're really leaning into the yeses that you have. So I'm really appreciating that construct of having a roadmap and then also having a level of clarity around the why.
Well, and I'll share with you, as I mentioned, last year I conducted a happiness audit because I found myself in this place of like, do I know what happiness feels like? Do I know those moments on which I felt pure, unadulterated joy? Like, what does joy feel like? And so, in reflection and conducting this happiness audit on my life and myself, it was interesting. One of the patterns that kept coming up were the happiest moments of my life had to do with music or dancing. I'm not a dancer. I've never played a musical instrument. I haven't been to a concert in several years. I actually am tone deaf and can't carry a beat. So it was like a really fascinating awareness for me that I could trace these memories of just like pure joy to times that I was with music. And I've since read that it's because it uses a different part of your brain in order to tap, like you learn and hear and feel through a different part of your brain when you listen to music. Now, I can tell you right before hopping on this recording, I just bought my family tickets to Lumineers in Chicago on Labor Day weekend, 2025. Now, my husband, who's an engineer, is I'm certain going to say like, we didn't need to take the little kids. Like, why did we buy 6 tickets? Like, why are we spending all this time and money and energy? But I know that if I know what sorts of memories or opportunities are going to come from putting myself in that environment based on patterns. So for me, it's become like that litmus or that like permission yes or permission no, and to defend that, even if my partner is like, we don't really all need to go to Lumineers, or, I don't, that's a bad day for us to go. I can defend what I know will produce opportunity for joy.
Yeah, and not to mention advance notice. I mean, it's gonna be hard to say no to that if you need a filler in one of the 6 tickets. That sounds like a really easy experience. Well, as we consider this conversation of human flourishing and self, where a lot of this got started was this understanding of what it means to navigate mental health and well-being. And again, there's been no shortage of recognition, and certainly as we are seeing how well-being has become such a cornerstone, whether you look at the Surgeon General's stake in the ground about how critical our total well-being is with having strength in our mental health. I think there's also a growing body of recognition around the relationship we have with suffering. And we've certainly had lots of dialogue around, isn't it possible to have a breakthrough without a breakdown? Like, can we get to the good stuff? Can we get to the happiness absent the struggle or absent the suffering? And again, as we're thinking about elevating human flourishing, so much with the self is really having a different relationship with what's the point of struggle?
Mhm.
What's the point of suffering? Can you give us any sense of your experience or just words of encouragement for people who would very much like to get to the breakthrough with like a free pass, and not go through the valley of despair in the process?
Oh, well, Deb, I love to recycle me some therapy. And let me just tell you that I have had a lot of therapy to assist me through some of my own suffering or traumas or pain or learning skills to cope with suffering. And I will tell you that this comes up for me often because I am a high performing individual who, as I'm like, likes an A+, likes to do her homework, likes to get it right. When something is wrong, I go into action mode. I go into capitalist mode. I'm like, throw money at it. I'll buy something. I'll do something. And I have had to work for years on sitting in the space. And so my therapist would say to me, the only way is through. The only way is through. There is no shortcut. There is no ladder out. There is no side door. The only way is through. And in the early days of this concept, I would say like, well, how will I know? Like, that sounds awful. Why would I want to sit in the suffering? Like, this is terrible. And she'd say, well, then, okay, keep doing what you're doing and let me know how that goes. And she would say, you just have to sit through. Now, I'll tell you that, let me think of how to tell this story. I will tell you that I had the opportunity to put it into practice lately. In a particular like home argument with my husband, I kept going back to the well, being like, but maybe you just don't understand. But this is my perspective on it. But maybe if we just did this, but maybe if we just did this. And I wasn't getting the result or the outcome that I so wanted by trying to fix it and go into action mode. And so I told myself, like, I'm not going to bring it up again. I'm going to leave it here and I'm not going to bring it up. And let me tell you, it was the most painful experience. Like, what? Not tell everybody I know what I think? Like, it was painful. I would have to like hold it in and think like, I should just mention this again. If I mention it, maybe he'll do something about it, or maybe, and I was wanting my actions to create someone else's outcome to change the scenario or the circumstance of the suffering or the pain. And I will tell you that on day like 3 of not saying anything, I started to be more contemplative and be more reflective. And it started to no longer be a conversation in my head about what Ken was or was not thinking or doing. It became about me and my relationship with the stakes on the table. And then I got to choose what I wanted to do or what I don't want to do or how I want to respond. It no longer became this, I need someone else to behave in a certain way in order to get to my end goal. So for me, sitting in that suffering or processing that suffering or knowing that suffering is a part of life, like it's just going to happen in one way or another. So when I allowed myself to sit in it and gave myself the place to be uncomfortable and the place to like arrive at the next step, I can tell you, you physically feel it. You physically feel it. Like whether it's an argument with a best friend, a disagreement with a husband, an expectation you have of somebody that they might not be able to meet. For me, sitting in there and really getting curious about my own feelings and thoughts around the suffering really helps. Like I think also recycled therapy, feelings have purposes. Your feelings are trying to tell you something. And when you get really curious about what your feelings are trying to tell you, even if they're suffering, even if they're fear or anxiety or pain or anything, when you get really clear on what's going on in your body and what that emotion is trying to do for you or protect you from, then you can switch your relationship with it. Then it becomes a place for you to absorb it, and it is what it is, not try to change it or throw money at it or activate it. So again, a long-winded way to say that, like for me, the best thing that has worked in any form of suffering is to feel it, to like let myself feel what it feels like in my heart, feel what it feels like in my legs, feel what it feels like to pause, to hold it, to think, to reflect, and like to really listen to my body has been my best approach. And that was for the bargain price of probably what, $30,000 in therapy. You're welcome, everyone.
You're welcome,
You're
audience.
welcome,
There you go.
audience.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, and and I want to just affirm that thinking about human flourishing through the lens of work, relationships, and self, I get the privilege of having a relationship with you in all three lanes, in our joint experiences professionally, in our collaboration, how we have an abundance of alignment around ideas and strategies to really cultivate that sense of connection and gathering, and in the space of how to really develop a relationship with yourself to be the best version of yourself. One of the best pieces of counsel and observation I've seen in our lives is when I've come through a space of being the one who's in suffering. And I remember years ago, we sort of likened it to, there are those moments when you're in the Shawshank Tunnel.
Mhm.
And if you remember, if you know, in spoiler alert, in the movie, Andy Dufresne is like tunneling through sewage in order to escape prison because he was wrongfully charged. But that sense of that never ending tunnel, there's only a way to keep going forward. But may I say, can you all be lucky to have somebody that will either ask you two questions? Do you need me to jump in and be with you in the tunnel, or do you need me to pull you out? And I think that as an expression of human flourishing in any capacity has made such a big difference for me, that sometimes our ability to just be with people in the muck is exactly what is needed to really capture that human experience. And sometimes it's our ingenuity, it's our intelligence, it's our resourcing to know how to help a person out. As we wrap for today in talking about human flourishing in all three of those lenses, any parting advice or counsel that you might share?
I would say I thought about all of the smart things that I could say in this podcast and this conversation because it all feels so important to me, especially in the world we're living in and how many people are at risk for a number of things. And it's surprising and delightful to me that we're ending on the word muck, like to be in the muck with someone, whether it's yourself or a partner or the world at large of which you're trying to inform a change. And I guess my parting word would be not to be afraid of the muck. Like the muck is a part of life. We all have a version of that muck or are afraid of some sort of muck. And when we're able to be in the space with the muck, whether it's someone else's or our own, it really is transformative to what is possible. And when I think about human flourishing for me is like our ability to have choices about what we want to do and the impact that we're creating for others. And so if you're not going to get good with the muck, then you're not going to get there. You're just not going to get there. Like getting good with the muck is one of the most important key ingredients with it of everything we talked about. So it feels like I thought I would say all of these like brilliant, eye-opening, incredible things, and it's really like get good with the muck.
Thanks for being here. If today's conversation sparked something in you, we hope you'll carry it forward with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep exploring what it means to be fully human.